It's always a controversial subject when I talk about HS2, but it does directly affect the canal network in various places, and I just want to cover that on this channel. Today I'm on the Birmingham and Fazeley Canal. You can see behind us there's quite a nice flight of locks. We've got Aston Lock, one bridge just in front of us and another lock, but this isn't why I'm here. So this is Aston Junction coming up, and Aston Junction is a junction for the Digbeth Canal, which goes on down through Birmingham past Curzon Street. That might give you a clue why I'm here. It's always a controversial subject when I talk about HS2, but it does directly affect the canal network in various places, and I just want to cover that on this channel. This is pretty cool. You can see on these bridges, you've got these kind of iron bridges in a lot of places around Birmingham. You can see just on here, Horsley Ironworks, 1828. So here you can see the rope marks, and they're all along this bridge, and that's where years ago the barge was pulled up through the locks. The horse had to cross to get to the towpath on the other side, so it would come across these bridges and run across. So the ropes would then sort of come across here. They pull the boat through, drop the rope off, reattach it underneath, and carry on pulling through. You can see here as well, they're quite big on this side. So this section of canal was built in 1789. And the Digbeth was completed in 1799, so this junction was a later addition. Almost straight away we see some infrastructure, and you can see here where there's a wall sort of blocking off the canal, completely built on that side. You can see the old parts of the wall here, but what this would have been, and this is where there's a bridge going across, instead of putting wharfs all the way down through the canal along the towpath where you would kind of disrupt any boats coming through, on the Birmingham canals it's quite popular to just literally put a little sort of spur through to take factories and stuff. There's some quite good examples of it down here. So the canal itself was built to link the Birmingham network on the Birmingham and Fazeley down towards the Warwick and Birmingham Canal. I'm sorry we're walking into the sun on this video. It's quite low. It's New Year's Day, so Happy New Year. As I said, you saw lots of places where they had little sort of offshoots of the canal. That would have been another one there. Now you can see where it goes in on the sides there. You probably can't see on the brickwork. There's like a fake arch built into it, and that's because it was only a small offshoot, but there was definitely a small offshoot there as well. And then we are straight into, I think it's Handsacre Street Bridge. You can see a pipe bridge in front, and I think there's one on the other side as well as the actual bridge, which is kind of hidden a little bit by the big pipe. Now this starts to get a little bit interesting on these, and you can see it on this side, but I'll show you better on the other side. You might be able to see just to the left of the sign there's some newer brick. Now that's a massive part of wartime history. I'll show you more as we get further down the canal. So coming up now, I've probably got the most impressive example of what I spoke about the bridges. You can see here this takes a towpath up and over. I'm trying to get rid of the camera glare here, so apologies. Now, yet again, there's absolutely nothing here. You can see reeds there, and this again would have been another little branch. And you can see sort of the bridge is still intact, but it's just bricked off and stopped on this side. This takes us into the first lock on the canal, which is the first of 6, which drop the canal 40 foot. It's not the biggest, but not tiny either. They're narrow locks, which like the tunnel we're just about to go into is. And this is the Ashted tunnel. So as I say, the Ashted tunnel is a narrow tunnel. It's fairly short. I will put a light on for you. It's 94 metres in length. And as you can see, only one boat can pass. It gets pretty narrow down here. Sort of towards the other end of the tunnel is you've really got to lean out over this sort of wooden fence they put up. The tunnel itself is quite bulgy in places as well, I've noticed, but otherwise seems to be in quite good condition. But you can see the lights highlight some of more bulgy aspects of the tunnel. So the canal itself is 1.25 miles long, and was quite busy in its time. So you can, as we exit the Ashted tunnel, you can start to see the redevelopment happening. You've got the biggest building in front of us, in front of the locks there, I think is a university, and that's all university on the right hand side there. Some new developments sort of up there, as well as new buildings happening right here, right next to us. So you've got a further 2 locks here, and you'll notice one thing on these locks. It's a bit narrower on this first one because you've got quite a bit of a pound up through here, effectively through the tunnel to the next lock. But you'll notice they do this a lot in cities. They have what's called a side pound. So instead of having like a big pound sort of between locks, or a big distance between locks, you get these little pounds that just hold that little bit more water, and they overflow from the end down through. It's quite cool seeing this in some of these areas. You've got all this new development going on. You've got just a few buildings dotted about in the middle that have been kept. You wonder if that's due to sort of someone holding out from buying, or they're listed and the council can't get around the redevelopment of it. There's a Birmingham University building there, which looks, that was something to do with all the stations around here, I think, and it's been redeveloped. They took the top off, it was completely derelict. They rebuilt the top, but have kept the main structure of it. And straight under the Belmont Road Bridge, which again takes you into locks. Now this is, I think this has been resurfaced at some point. I wonder if they had leakage, because you can tell on this end that you've got the old, looks like wear here from the ropes. And this is the old brick bridge, you can see the old brick arch, and then you've got this section here. So that's got pretty low headroom. Then lock number 4, so there's only 2 left after this. I'm just going to step across and show you this pound. So you've got university locks just up there. But there's some hangovers in there today. I didn't have a single drink last night because I was leaving early to come up here to film. My wife doesn't drink, so these pounds are literally just about water, and you sit between a lock here, which is pretty cool. The water level must be low, and it's at gates leaking quite a bit on there. As you can see where the spill is over for that. Literally drops down the sort of the horseshoe there, and then we'll come out into the canal down here. So you might just be able to see HS2 up ahead. You can see the cranes over there, and you've got some of the part of the viaduct. There's a massive viaduct going into the city at Curzon Street Station, which is just over there. And as I said, you've got 2 locks left. This is lock 5, and you've got lock number 6. So lock 5 drops you off under Curzon Street Bridge, and I'll show you now exactly what I mean by the history of the war. So what you've got here is these red hatches. They were put in the war. They did it in quite a few places. They cut them into the side of the bridge, and then what it allows you to do is drop a fire hose down into the canal. So when the bombing was happening, they could collect water from the canal at every bridge to put out the fires from the Blitz. And a lot of them still stand to this day. And here we are, approaching to HS2. So as you can see, they've got these big steel girders, and they've also got concrete bits. I think the steel ones are because there's a wider gap between them. So obviously it's got to cross the canal over lock 6. So lock 6 will be under HS2. So this big span here is much bigger than the little spans between the viaduct sections before there. Birmingham originally had a Curzon Street railway station, and you can still see the old main building here. This is being kept and renovated, although I think there's been some delays on it. It should be done fairly soon. So Birmingham was supposed to be the heart of the network, but obviously with the cancellation of the North by Sunak. So it does carry on through to sort of Lichfield and on up to the West Coast Mainline, a place called Handsacre. I've covered sections of that with the Lichfield Canal, which is being restored at the moment. Curzon Street Station is going to be pretty close to both Moore Street and Birmingham New Street, so it's quite a good place to sort of come into and get off to travel around the rest of Birmingham. And it will eventually connect to sort of London Euston and Old Oak Common. Although London Euston's been cancelled, the station will have 7 platforms with retail trams and public spaces below, and was planned to open in 2026 in 2 years, but I think that's 2027 now, but I'm sure that won't be for another 10 years or so with Tory planning. So just up a bit further, you can see the cranes there on the viaduct, and this is where the station is going to be. There's not really much sort of happening here at the moment, lots of ground clearance and stuff. I'm not sure when main construction of the actual station will be planned to start. So this is Curzon Street Tunnel. This is obviously a very wide tunnel. You'll easily pass 2 narrow boats in here, if not bigger boats, and it sits on a curve. It's 147 metres long. There's about 6 railway lines going across the top, and has the railway tracks for Moore Street up above, as well as Birmingham New Street, I think, runs on the same sort of route. And there's quite a bit of wasteland up there as well, where there used to be some warehouses. Next up, we've got quite an interesting little area. So this is kind of a junction. Straight down would take you to the Taifu Basin, which is much smaller than it used to be. There was a massive Taifu tea warehouse on there, hence the name. Then this red building here, this is the Birmingham Gun Barrel Proof House, and it's a weapons proving place. It was designed by John Horton. It was established in 1813 by an Act of Parliament, and there was a Jacobean style gateway added in 1883. So the Birmingham gun trade was quite prosperous back then, and they needed a way to prove the guns, basically. So what you do, and you would fire them at barrels until they exploded, hence the reason why it's a gun barrel proof house. So we carry on down through here. So this here is called Warwick Bar, and this was originally the end of the canal. So it was a physical gap between the Grand Union Canal, which was Warwick and Birmingham on the other side, and the Digbeth Branch of the Birmingham and Fazeley Canal. They were built by different companies, and they had to try and ship goods between boats on 2 sides of the bar. It stopped any of the canals from drawing water from each other, but eventually it was replaced with a stop block. So you could basically bring your boat into here with that gate locked, shut that gate, open that one, and if there's any height difference in the canals, the amount of water lost was minimal, just what was filled up in this lock, and then you could carry on down through the canal. And then this is the banana warehouse. So this has been dilapidated for a long time. You can see it's got these cast iron posts holding the roof up, which is asbestos and very rotten on the timbers on there. It was called the banana warehouse because it was originally Geest bananas. It was built in about 1840, and you can see it kind of carries over the stop block. So it was vacant till quite recently, but BBC Masterchef now have it, and it was approved in 2023 for it to be redeveloped. So they're keeping the banana warehouse and renovating it, but there's quite a lot of construction work going on the other side for further studios. It's part of a massive regeneration of this area. We have a small aqueduct first, which takes the canal over, I think it's the River Ray. Then this leads down to, you can see a few more bridges, as well as old warehouses. You can see the overhang there on that warehouse. That would have been an original overhang for loading goods off of the boats, or dropping goods into the boats. They'd often have like a little opening in the bottom of it, so the boat would come under here, and you would just literally drop the grain or whatever the goods were down into the barge that was moored below. And then onto a couple of bridges, the main one being is quite a high one. And this is part of an old railway, and you see it dotted around all over this area, where there's kind of little sections of it, and then it just suddenly ends. Would have been a bridge where it weaved through the old city. So I always like to hear what you think of HS2. As I say, it always brings a big divide on the channel, both on YouTube and various other places, Facebook especially. It's one of those things that probably shouldn't have happened. It did happen, and it should probably be finished. Otherwise you're spending 100 billion on something that's pointless, really. The whole point of it was to open up freight to the West Coast, so the West Coast Mainline could run freight and passenger services would run on the new line. Now, none of that will happen. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.